All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started since it's 5 o'clock. My name is Catherine Hale, and I'm a study abroad advisor in the Office of Study Abroad and Global Learning. Our overall unit office that oversees everything related to international is called Global Learning and International Affairs. And I'm going to go ahead and let my co-presenters introduce themselves as well. And we have a couple of students who are serving as panelists that can introduce themselves also. So Lindsay, do you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Lindsay Houchin. I work as the coordinator of nationally competitive opportunities in the Office of Scholar Development. That's a mouthful, but the short version is that I help WKU students pursue scholarships that are beyond WKU funding opportunities, and you'll get a glimpse of that later on in our presentation.
Great. And then Tiffany Denton from Financial Aid is here, I believe. Tiffany, are you available to introduce yourself? Not sure.
Tiffany, we can't hear you.
We can move on to Kirby. Kirby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Kirby. I am a junior, and I studied abroad twice, once in Morocco and once in Costa Rica.
Awesome. And then we'll go to Tino Garcia, if he's on yet. I think he was having some trouble connecting.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tino Garcia. I am a junior at WKU this year, and I studied abroad in Segovia, Spain this past spring.
Awesome. And Tiffany, are you able to unmute yourself now? Awesome.
Okay. Oh, I'm Tiffany Denton. I'm from the Financial Aid Office.
All righty, so we'll go ahead and get started. We want to ask you all a couple questions. Whoops. Oh yes, what we're going to cover today, and then we'll have a couple of poll questions for you. So we're going to go over some strategies for how to make study abroad affordable. I'll talk a little bit about different types of scholarships, tips for preparing scholarship applications. That's what Lindsay's going to cover. Tiffany Denton is going to talk about financial aid and how you can use it toward your study abroad costs. And then Kirby and Tino will be doing answering some questions on a panel, and they'll take any questions from you all who are in this session today. All right, so our first poll question, we want to find out from you, ideally, what term are you all planning to study abroad? So you can join this poll either on a browser, if you're on a computer, by going to pollev.com/WKU abroad, or you can text. You have to text WKU abroad to the number 37607 to join the poll. And then once you're in the poll, you just text in your letter to respond. So I'll give you all a minute to join the poll. Glad to see a few people are getting on there. Very cool. All right, we got a lot of responses in. I'm glad to see a lot of people are thinking of studying abroad. Summer 21, now is the time to be planning for sure if you're looking at next year. Fall as well, it's great to plan about a year in advance. And I see quite a few of you are thinking later on, maybe 2022 or afterwards, which is great. It's never too early to start planning. And that's okay if you're not sure yet. So that's what this virtual study abroad fair is about. It will hopefully allow you to explore some different possibilities and kind of start thinking about what might be best for you and start getting your finances together, figuring out what scholarships you can apply for and everything. Great. See some more answers have still been coming in. Glad to see how many people are interested in doing a semester program. That's awesome. Usually our short-term programs are the most popular. We have, of course, programs for every term. Once COVID eases up, of course, right now no one's studying abroad on traditional programs, but we hope it'll resume soon. All right, I'm going to move on. Let's see if it'll advance. Okay, second poll. What is your biggest concern when you think about studying abroad? This can be one word, it can be a phrase, and it'll create kind of a word cloud. It's all anonymous. See, it's very relevant to this session. I'm going to write some of these down because at the end, when our two student panelists answer some questions, they can address a few of the concerns that are non-financial and some of the financial ones as well. All right, looks like things have settled out. So we see that money is the biggest concern for everyone. Finances, a lot of things related to that. So that's what we're hopefully going to help address in our session today. And then, of course, we want to be able to answer any other questions you all have about study abroad. So we'll have time toward the end for that. All right. So starting off, just a few strategies, overall strategies to try to make study abroad affordable. One that I already hit on is planning early. Planning early really helps because that means you have a lot of time to really carefully consider what program option would be best for your goals and for your budget, and that lines up with the funding sources that you have available as well. So we usually recommend starting about a year in advance. Of course, it's not too late if you start the semester before you go, but starting a year in advance often helps even more because that means you can apply for all possible scholarships because some scholarships only have one deadline a year. And some scholarships allow you to apply early and then try again if you don't get it the first time. Another strategy is selecting a program that's affordable to begin with. We have a lot of different options through all the different partner programs we have and our own kind of internal programs. So there are plenty of choices. Some programs are priced affordably to begin with. And by affordable, I mean kind of similar to what you might be paying if you were to be on campus studying at WKU. So any program, like semester program that's in the same cost range as WKU, I would consider very affordable. And it could often be extremely affordable once you apply for scholarship funding and utilize like the financial aid and scholarships you already get. And then we have quite a few short-term programs, summer and winter, that are only a few $1,000s. And then once you factor in scholarships, then it can be very reasonable. You may want to expand your options of what locations you would consider, because if you are really dead set on Australia or going to Western Europe, those programs tend to be a little more expensive. But if you become more flexible with location and with program length, you'll find that there's going to be more affordable options for you and more scholarship opportunities as well. You want to carefully consider what term makes the most financial sense for you, because if you have a lot of financial aid and institutional scholarships that you get, normally during semesters, maybe you want to consider a semester instead of summer. If you get Pell Grant, you can receive Pell in the summer or during semesters. Maybe financially, going for a whole semester and not working that time doesn't make sense for you, and that's why you might want to do a summer or winter. So I just like to tell students each person is different. So there's not one ideal time, or time during your major, or time during the year that's best for every student. It kind of depends on your own circumstances. You want to carefully budget and make sure you understand the full cost, because if you just look at the program fee, you probably will not be planning wisely for your finances, because usually there's some additional expenses on top of the program fee. So it's good to fully understand how much the whole cost is, and then go from there with applying for funding. You also want to make sure you're tapping into all of the funding sources you have available, and try to be creative. We have a kind of cool creative fundraising guide that our student ambassadors put together a couple of years ago that we can share if you're interested, that has some creative ways outside of applying for scholarships or using financial aid that you can try to raise money or save money to be able to study abroad. So there's quite a lot of scholarships through WKU. The one that applies to pretty much any student who's going on a study abroad program, or even a study away program, a short-term study away through our faculty-led options, is the World Topper Scholarship. And that we have a deadline each semester. It's usually just a priority deadline. So if you miss it, you can still apply. And if we have funding available for that term, then you can still receive a scholarship. The World Topper tends to be a few $100s, but it depends on how much funding we have for the given year. We anticipate if you are planning to do a summer program next year, you might be able to get a bigger scholarship than normal, since we aren't giving scholarships to many students, fall, winter, and spring this year. The second one that our office offers is the EDGE grant, and that is our diversity scholarship. That's for students from underrepresented groups, and it includes not just racial and ethnic minority students, but also first generation college students, students from the Appalachian region, LGBT, students with disabilities. So check that one out if you think you might fit into one of those categories. And that would be on top of whatever World Topper funding you get, but it is a little more selective. And then a few others, SGA offers a scholarship, typically honors. If you're a McCurran Honors College student, you can apply for the Honors Travel Abroad Grant. Several different academic departments on campus offer scholarship funding, and then you can also check out the Top Dollar Scholarship portal search engine, because there's some donor scholarships listed there, and a few are specifically for study abroad. And then there's a few other types, broad categories of scholarships. We're not going to go into detail about many of the scholarships, because we have a whole list that we can send you as a follow-up email to the people attending today. That details like all the different scholarships we're aware of, and it has links and some specific eligibility requirements, deadlines, stuff like that. So one of these categories is program specific. So based on the organization you're going through, you could apply for funding that's available just through that organization. A second one is location specific. So there are certain regions or countries where there's funding, particularly for students going to those locations. Honor societies, there is one called Phi Kappa Phi that doesn't require you to be a member, but you do have to have a high GPA, 3.75 or higher. And then another one that's the Golden Key that you do have to be a member for to be able to apply for. So those, we've had quite a few students get the Phi Kappa Phi scholarship. And then there's also nationally competitive scholarships, which is what Lindsay advises on. And this is a good segue to Lindsay's section. But a couple I just wanted to go ahead and point out are the Gilman. The Gilman scholarship is through the Department of State, and it's for study abroad that is 21 days or longer. And students, you would qualify for this if you have a Pell Grant. You have to be currently receiving a Pell Grant or be receiving it at the time that you plan to study abroad. And there's a deadline each semester, and that's one where you can apply early and see if you get it, and then reapply if you don't. So you could have potentially 2 opportunities. And it's for up to $5,000 typically. And then Freeman Asia is for students who are studying in Asia for at least 8 weeks. So just wanted to point those 2 out since they're especially large. So I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay now.
Thanks, Catherine. And will you be just switching slides kind of on my cue?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm representing the Office of Scholar Development, or OSD for short. And I'm on a personal mission to make sure everyone on our campus understands what we do and how we can help you. So we help students just like you prepare applications for nationally competitive scholarships. And I think too often people tend to count themselves out of pools or arenas like that because we don't give ourselves enough credit. But we know from our history that WKU students are a really great fit for these programs. Catherine, you can switch there. Just as a testament to that, I'm really proud of the success our students have seen in the Gilman application cycle. So again, this is the scholarship that Catherine just mentioned. If you receive a Pell Grant, you're a great fit for this scholarship program. Last semester alone, we had 27 students recognized by the program, most of whom received funding for their study abroad scholarships. So that just goes to show you that students just like you are successful in these competitions, especially with some early planning and some really key strategies in the application itself. So I want to reiterate just a couple of things that Catherine said as it relates to the work I do with nationally competitive scholarships. If you're interested in these scholarships beyond WKU funding, I really have got to emphasize that 1 year timeline. Again, it's not too late if you're working on the semester that's just to come, but if you start early, you're going to maximize your scholarship potential. That means you're going to get as many chances as possible in as many places as possible, and that's where you really start to see it pay off. The second hack is to consider your scholarship potential when you're selecting your program. You heard some of this from Catherine, but I want to reiterate, especially for these nationally competitive scholarships, a lot of preference is given to people who are really intentional in their program selection. So looking for programs that are a strong fit for your academic and professional goals, or programs that have a really immersive element like language study or a homestay, or maybe a deep dive into a culture that's really unlike your own in your background, that's a really strong fit for a nationally competitive scholarship. All right, so you're gonna hear the word Gilman quite a bit, but we wanna make sure everyone who's eligible for this program knows that it's out there. So you heard, if you receive a Pell Grant, you really should apply for the Gilman Scholarship. We have a strong track record with this scholarship, and its whole purpose is to help students actually access the study abroad experience. If you're not sure whether you receive a Pell Grant, you can check your TopNet account. I've given you kind of the click crumbs for identifying whether you currently receive that Pell Grant, but Tiffany will probably mention as well that she's happy to help you kind of decode that too. If you are eligible for a Gilman Scholarship, you want to be looking for a study abroad program that is 21 days or longer. That's the minimum length of time, and that's pretty typical for most nationally competitive scholarships. So looking for those programs that are about 1 month long or longer is going to be where you're really maximizing your scholarship potential. Now here's where the 1 year of advanced planning really pays off. If you apply for, let's say, a summer 21 program, I saw that was a popular choice for y'all. If you're applying for the Gilman Scholarship, you can apply in October for that summer program. That means that you are pursuing scholarship funding without ever having to put money on the line with a deposit. So you can kind of see what's possible before having to totally commit and have skin in the game. And then if you aren't selected in that October application cycle, you can go back to that essay, do some tweaks and revisions with me, try to strengthen your application just a little bit more, and reapply in March. This past semester, we had a few students who were successful on their second try. So that goes to show that it's really beneficial to build in that cushion for yourself by planning ahead. And I also want to stress that you don't have to have all of the details figured out to apply for the Gilman Scholarship. So if you're even curious or interested, I definitely recommend that you connect with me to talk about that. Now, I'm going to use this scholarship to give you a sense of what working with OSD really looks like. As you can see at the bottom there, you've got a short link to register for a Gilman workshop. If you're eligible, definitely encourage you to do that. When you come to the workshop, you're going to get a worksheet that basically turns into an outline for your essays. I'm a former high school English teacher. This is my jam. I love helping students organize their application materials so that they're really efficient and effective. And then after you write your draft, no matter how rough it is, you get to send it to me and I'll jump in with comments and revisions and ideas for how to strengthen that. So if you get started early, again, that's the theme here, you really maximize your opportunity to improve those application materials. And we see that pay off. The people who really are investing quite a lot of time in those applications tend to produce a product that they're really proud to submit instead of saying, oh, I wish I had more time to work on this. So it definitely pays off. As Catherine said, there are so many scholarship opportunities. In fact, if you connect with either of our offices asking about other opportunities that are available, you'll probably be given about an 8-page document that can be really intimidating, but it's a comprehensive start. And we can sit down with you and even physically highlight the opportunities that you and your program are eligible for. It's helpful though to kind of, in your early planning phases, consider what your options will be. So for example, if you're really trying to maximize scholarship support for this international experience, you might consider looking into programs in Asia, because the Freeman Asia Awards are here to help students study at least 8 weeks or longer in an Asian country. And they're really looking for people with demonstrated financial need. They want to help you make it possible. So if you know kind of what the eligibility criteria for the scholarships is, you can really be strategic and play chess with your long-term study abroad goals. All right, so this is a sample timeline, and I know this is a lot of words on the screen, but it's the best way for you to see how all of these scholarships and their deadlines stack up. If you're pursuing a summer 2021 program, then now is the time to be getting started, and we really mean that. You want to build in time to really do your research, meet with a study abroad advisor, meet with Tiffany in financial aid, meet with me, all via Zoom, so that you can get all the necessary details. And you can map out what that timeline will look like for you based on scholarships that you're eligible for. So now's the time to be working on a Gilman application, and then we'll be forecasting other opportunities that you'll have in the near future. All right, so now briefly, I want to give you a few tips for preparing a strong scholarship application. These are helpful whether you're applying for internal funding or nationally competitive opportunities, so it's definitely something you want to take a few notes on. I'm also dropping a link in the chat to a file that gives the short version of these on the second page, just in case you want to start there and take some notes. All right, so first up, Catherine, you can go ahead and switch the slide, is to always answer the prompt. You wouldn't even believe how many people submit an essay for a scholarship and it doesn't have anything to do with the actual prompt. Most of these scholarships are interested in why you selected your particular study abroad program and what has prepared you for that. But they might frame it a little bit differently depending on the priorities of their program. So you really want to make sure that you are paying attention to those specific prompts. It's okay to recycle elements of these essays, but you don't want to just copy and paste the whole thing, because you're probably not going to unlock all the credit that you could be earning if you just made a few tweaks and revisions. Next up, I am a broken record for this phrase, be specific. A good litmus test for this is to ask yourself, could someone else say the same thing and it be true? If the answer is yes, then you're not being specific enough. So the reasons that I want to study abroad in Morocco are different than the reasons Kirby wants to study abroad in Morocco. And it's up to each of us to really show the specifics of that. It's okay if you're approaching study abroad basically because you want to travel internationally. I've been there, I've done that, but the strongest scholarship applications are really making a strong case for why you are worth the investment. So spend some time digging into not only the details of the program, but also maybe the culture and the location where you'll be studying, so that you can really make a strong, informed claim of what you hope to accomplish by spending time in that place. Next up, you want to keep the mission of each of the scholarships in mind, and this goes for WKU scholarships as well as nationally competitive ones. So you always want to ask, how can I help this group accomplish their goals? How do I fit in with their mission and their purpose? And we have this tendency to count ourselves out. We look at the about page on the website and we think, that's not me, that's not me. But they're not looking for someone who hits all of the boxes. If you do, then you want to make sure to include that. But in reality, they're just looking for the ways that you do fit in. So compare these two. The Gilman Scholarship is trying to diversify the students who study abroad and also encourage really immersive, hands-on cultural experiences. So the application you prepare for that scholarship should be a little bit different than one for Phi Kappa Phi, which is all about the knowledge and the learning that's going to happen abroad. Gilman Scholarship wants to know who you are and the dimensions of diversity that you represent. Phi Kappa Phi wants to know, what do you want to learn while you're there? Then on the note of diversity, it's up to you to disclose the dimensions that you represent. And diversity in study abroad is a little bit different than maybe how we think of diversity just in our everyday lives. It can be personal, maybe racial or ethnic background, but as Catherine mentioned earlier, there are tons of dimensions that study abroad funding agencies are interested in promoting. So for example, students with disabilities or students who have military backgrounds. If you're a first generation college student, that's definitely a detail to weave into your scholarship essay, because that's a big priority for a lot of the funding agencies too. On a totally different note, maybe your academic and professional goals make you kind of an underrepresented group in these application pools. So for example, most students who are studying abroad as it is come from the humanities, maybe history, political science, and no shame if that's you. You can be successful in these scholarships too. But if you're maybe a STEM student or you're a student teacher looking into international student teaching, or maybe you're a nursing student, there are funding agencies that want to help you study abroad so that you get to bring that experience to your profession too. And don't forget that even where you're from can be a dimension of diversity, especially in nationally competitive opportunities. As you can imagine, there are a lot of people in California or in New York who are pursuing these international experiences. But a lot of these funding agencies are interested in people coming from rural areas too, no matter what that looks like. Last but not least, and actually I think there's one more after this, but we really want to emphasize that you want to really connect your study abroad program to your goals. These scholarships, again, they are investors who are looking for a strong rate of return. So they are not so interested in funding vacations, right? Or international experience for the sake of international experience. They really want to invest in your personal academic and career goals. And sometimes this takes some digging. That's where we can help when you're working on those scholarship applications, because we can kind of connect the dots with you and maybe introduce you to some elements that would be helpful to include in your application. Now, last but not least, I want to make sure that you're thinking about the ways you can align your story with their mission. So when you're writing a strong study abroad application essay, it's up to you to really connect who you are and who they're looking for. But I think sometimes this gives my students a sense of anxiety, especially when it comes to mapping a future and articulating how study abroad can help you get there. Because if you're like me, when you're in college, you're kind of open to possibility and you're not super committed to one specific career path just yet. For the sake of your scholarship application essay, we really encourage you to go ahead and choose one of those multiple features and use that to create a rock solid foundation for the value of your study abroad experience. That's going to make for a much stronger scholarship essay than one that says, for example, with my English degree, I might teach high school English, but I might also go into higher education. Then you basically need two different essays in order to convince them that you really put the thought and planning into this program. All right, and on this slide, I will say farewell, but I want to make sure you have my contact information here. I'm happy to be your first stop, your second stop, your third stop, whatever makes sense for you and your process. But if you're interested in scholarships beyond WKU, I'm your girl, and I hope you'll reach out. Just let me know where you're interested in studying and when, and then we can get to work on figuring out what you'll be eligible for.
Great, we'll move on to Tiffany Denton, who's going to talk about student financial assistance for study abroad.
Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so where do you begin? Basically, the first step is filling out your FAFSA application. You need to allow about 4 weeks for the FAFSA to be processed. We're getting them in much quicker. We're processing them much quicker, but here in a couple weeks, the 2021-22 academic year FAFSAs will be coming in. So that may delay some of the processing just a little bit. And if there are any problems with your FAFSA application, that could delay the processing as well. You can begin filling out the FAFSA for the next academic year beginning October 1st. The second thing you want to do is just determine the cost of your program. There's cost information on Study Abroad's website. This will tell you, about how much you can estimate to spend on your study abroad, but it also provides us a cost of attendance for your program. We can't exceed that cost of attendance when awarding aid for your program. If your program is during the winter or summer terms and you have loan eligibility, there's an additional application you'll need to fill out. It's just a loan preference application. If you must be enrolled in both your winter and spring terms in order to receive the winter loan preference application. And then this is information basically that's the information that I'm going to give you in this presentation is for a normal study abroad format. Rather than, we don't know how COVID is going to affect some of the study abroad programs. You can go to the next one. Okay, so how can you prepare? Basically, just be aware of how much financial aid you've utilized already. If you've already received your max amount of student loan or Pell Grant, you may not be eligible to receive additional federal aid for the winter or summer terms because there isn't any extra federal aid for study abroad. Usually what you're awarded, that's what you can use towards your study abroad program. And I always know when the scholarships have been announced, the scholarship awards have been announced because I get a lot of appointments around that time. Basically, you're just going to kind of want to ask yourself when you're in the planning stage, how am I going to pay for this if I don't get a scholarship? So just, email me, come on up, and just make that kind of part of your exploration phase. You're not committing to anything by talking to me. You just kind of want to know what your options are and when those need to be in place because you may not have eligibility for that program and you don't want to be committed to that and not have the funds in place. You're also going to kind of want to read, understand your costs, talk to your advisor about how much you can expect to spend on your study abroad. You don't want to have the bare minimum for your study abroad program. If you're planning to use financial aid, federal regulations don't allow us to release your funds in advance. So if you're expecting a residual for your study abroad, we can't release the residual early. So anything like airline tickets or passport fees will need to be paid in advance, and then kind of reimburse yourself with your financial aid if you're going to be getting a residual. So these are the types of aid that are available: grants and student loans. Grants, of course, you have CAP grant, which is for just Kentucky residents. You have Pell Grant and SCOG. The CAP and the CAP and SCOG are just for the fall and spring terms. Loan, there's also student loans. So you have your basic student loans, the subsidized and unsubsidized loan, and you also have Parent Plus loan if you're a dependent student. There's also the option of private loans. Those are loans from outside lenders. You would apply for those using your FAFSA application. So loan limits. These are limits that the federal government sets for student loans. We don't set the limit on the student loans. So basically, if you're a freshman and you're a dependent student, which most of you would be, it's $5,500 for the academic year that you can be awarded in student loan. Now, if you're an independent or if you have a denied plus, it's $9,500. And then sophomore and junior, those go up a little bit more, $6,500 and $7,500. And then those are the amounts over there, the 10.5 and the 12.5, if you are an independent student or if you have a denied plus loan. If you are a dependent student with a Parent Plus loan that's approved, you may have the option of increasing that plus loan for the term that you're studying abroad. Generally, the study abroad budgets are higher than your cost of attendance here at Western, so we're able to increase students' cost budgets, financial aid budgets, to allow for like additional private loan or Parent Plus loan. Generally, you have to be enrolled for federal student loan. You have to be enrolled in at least 6 hours. If you're an undergrad student, graduate students, it's 4.5 hours. We don't usually see a lot of graduate students studying abroad. It's mostly undergrad. So for financial aid purposes, and this is kind of a little weird for people, there is no winter term financial aid. We combine the hours with the spring term. So for instance, if you're studying abroad 3 hours during the winter term, and then you're attending, let's say 9 hours in the spring, then you have a combined enrollment for financial aid purposes of 12 hours. So just keep that in mind when you're planning for your financial aid if you're planning to go winter term. Also keep in mind that any changes to your summer schedule could result in funds being returned. So you want to make sure that your summer schedule is in place before summer disbursement, and make sure that it's the classes that you're wanting to take. Don't just sign up for classes so you can be enrolled and get awarded your financial aid, because even that amount could change. On occasion, students have room in their cost of attendance, their fall spring cost of attendance, to borrow ahead for winter or summer. I see a lot of study abroad students that could do that. So just check with us, and that may help with some of the paperwork that you have to fill out. You may not have to fill out that summer loan preference application if you have room in your spring term, for instance, to get your student loan. So then you'd have your money a little bit in advance. Okay, so year-round Pell Grant. A lot of you all, this would apply to a lot of you all because you're more traditional students that study abroad. A few years back, the federal government allowed students that attended full-time during the fall and spring semester to receive Pell Grant during the summer term. Now there are some requirements. You would have to be Pell eligible. You have to be seeking a degree. You haven't earned your bachelor's degree. And you haven't met your Pell lifetime limit, which is 12 full-time semesters. And most importantly, you have to be enrolled in at least 6 hours in order to receive that additional Pell Grant if you've already received full-time Pell Grant for fall and spring semesters. So I've just kind of given an example. Down there, Big Red attends 12 hours in the fall, 12 hours in the spring. So he's received $31.73 in Pell for each semester. So if he's going to take 6 hours in the summer, he may have about $1,500 in Pell eligibility for the summer. We start awarding for the summer beginning late March, early April. And I have kind of underlined and italicized in bold that you have to be enrolled before we can award summer aid. And we'll just pick you up automatically. There's no separate application process. It's just, we'll just pick you up as when we start awarding. And typically, if you enroll in classes, it's usually about a week or so that we pick your name up on a report to award your Pell. There's also the option of private loans and work study. Private loans, like I said before, this is just a non-federal loan from an outside lender. This is helpful if you've already hit your loan limit for the academic year. Maybe your SAP isn't good, or you don't want to fill out your FAFSA application. So you don't have to fill out your FAFSA. A lot of you all may need a co-signer for that student loan because you don't have credit established. And you don't have to be at least half time. So that would be helpful if you're attending like a 3-hour program, for instance. The interest rate does vary by credit score and lender. We've heard in recent years that private lenders have become more competitive with the federal government. So that may be an avenue that you want to explore, especially when comparing the Parent Plus loan versus a private loan. Also, student employment. If you know when you're going to go, maybe consider a job on campus. This will allow you to kind of help with those airline tickets, those advanced charges, or maybe just some spending money for your study abroad. Scholarships. Generally, you can use a university scholarship if you're being charged a WKU. You may want to check before you plan for your study abroad because some of the scholarship requirements do change. So you'll want to check with the scholarship office prior to committing to your program to make sure that your scholarship is going to apply to your program. If you have any questions specifically concerning study abroad related scholarships, Study Abroad or Office of Scholar Development are very good resources for study abroad related scholarship questions. I don't really have a great knowledge of outside scholarship, study abroad scholarships. University scholarships cannot be used during the winter or summer terms. Now, of course, your university scholarship is just going to apply naturally to the spring term. So it may end up some of your aid rolling back to apply toward the winter term. If you have any kind of VA benefits, make sure that you inquire with our office, the VA office, and in the financial aid office before you plan to use those benefits to see if you can use those towards your study abroad. Your KEYS money, if you have KEYS money, you have to be billed at WKU or another Kentucky institution to use your KEYS money. And that's just a kind of one of those rules that go along with the KEYS money. You can only use that during the fall and spring semester. So they can't apply, KEYS doesn't apply toward the summer term.
Thank you, Tiffany. Now it's time for our 2 student panelists to answer any questions that people have. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my questions that I have for the panel. But if you have questions right now, you can put it into the chat and we'll make sure to get those answered. You can also unmute yourself if you want as well to ask a question. But we'll just start with a couple questions to both of the students we have here. First one is, can you share how you considered finances and funding when you were selecting your program? And we'll start with Tino.
Hello, everyone. Once again, from the poll, we can see that finances is probably the biggest concern that we all have. Just like all of you, I was in your shoes exactly a year ago, going through this process. For me, funding was definitely the biggest factor in making a decision to study abroad. The good thing about you guys is that you guys are here a year in advance. I actually made the decision to study abroad 2 weeks before the deadline. So as you can see, I am living proof that it is possible to afford your program. I researched my programs. I studied Spanish abroad. So one of my professors was actually the director of the program that I went on. And since I was completing my major, it was the best fit for me. But I always doubted that I wasn't going to be able to afford it. But in the back of my mind, I always had a backup plan. I started saving money in the summer. I worked on campus. I had a full-time job. And just like that, I saved. And my parents helped me with as much as they could. I applied for scholarships. So definitely follow Lindsay and Tiffany's advice on getting on those scholarships as early as possible, because you will have higher opportunities to get them.
Thanks, Tino. What about you, Kirby?
Yeah, so when I first studied abroad to go to Morocco, I applied for a lot of scholarships, the institutional scholarships, and I also applied for a few of the nationally competitive ones. I ended up not getting, I applied for the Gilman, I didn't receive it. So the last couple of weeks before the semester ended, I was scrambling, trying to align funding somehow, and luckily it all worked out. So definitely I understand what Tina was talking about. I went, I think, to Catherine's office, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. And that was really great. She helped me so much. As for Costa Rica, I went abroad this past spring, and I knew what I was doing more. So I looked for programs that fit within my budget, which I wanted to correspond somewhat to WKU's tuition and the total cost of attendance, because I do have scholarships at WKU. So I chose a program that was close to the same total cost as to go to Western. I think it was maybe $1,000 more, including the airplane ticket. And also, when I was in Costa Rica, I made myself a budget sheet that I stuck to religiously. I said I will have, I think it was $100 every month, or maybe it was $200 every month of total spending on my travel, on my food, on souvenirs. I think it was $100. And something, I added it to my budget sheet so that I would know I was on track to not overspend while I was abroad.
Awesome. Thanks for those tips. Well, since you're talking, Kirby, could you share a little bit about how you identified what funding to apply for and the process of applying, and any creative strategies you used?
Well, I want to say you should definitely use the scholarship list that OSD provides. I used that, and I went through and I highlighted everything that I thought I was eligible for, and that was super helpful. Also, just sitting down with Lindsay and going over like how to answer the prompts for the Gilman Scholarship. That was really helpful for me. I also used my language whenever I went abroad the first time. When I went to Morocco, I was studying Arabic. And so I made an intentional program choice so that I could show within my Gilman application that I was studying a language for the extra-critical language part, that the program makes sense and it fits exactly, what it is that I want to do. And I also talked about being first generation. So definitely listening to all the advice that Lindsay has to offer.
Great. What about you, Tino?
I completely agree with Kirby. I actually scheduled a meeting with Catherine. I sat down with her. I didn't know where to begin, but she did give me that scholarship packet. We sat down together, we highlighted it, and then after doing all that, I narrowed it down to all of the scholarships that I was going to apply to, that I would qualify for. I also worked with Lindsay in the Office of Scholar Development to apply for the Gilman Scholarship. She assisted me in reviewing them. She helped me answer the prompt. Like I told you guys, I was on a tighter schedule, doing this 2 weeks before. So I was submitting one scholarship application and another one back to back. So I had sleepless nights, but it's all worth it in the end. I know all of you can do it. So definitely keep your options open, get on those scholarships as soon as you can. And like Lindsay said prior to this, make sure you're answering the prompt in all of your applications.
Great. I'd like to go back to something Kirby had said about coming to the office after she realized that she wasn't getting some of the scholarship funding she hoped for. And I think Tino might have done this as well, but keep in mind, like our office, we have the World Topper Scholarship, and we usually try to set aside some funding for students who don't get some of the big scholarships they were counting on, or students who are just falling short a little bit. We can't guarantee anything, but we do try to help people that we know have put a lot of effort into the application process, like applying for as much funding as possible. So that's definitely something to have in your back pocket. Tino, can you share a little bit about that process of applying for scholarships and planning to study abroad, and how, or even studying abroad, how that might have helped you clarify your pathway, like academically or career-wise, if it had any effect?
Definitely. So throughout the entire process, I had my mindset on what I wanted to pursue as a career. When I applied for Gilman and I sat down with Lindsay, she helped me through it all. I always knew that I wanted to use my ability to speak Spanish to provide services for those people that didn't speak English. And I connected that in my application for the Gilman Scholarship, for which I was selected as an alternate. It proved to me that I was able, applying for this competitive scholarship actually made me feel proud of myself. I know sometimes we all doubt ourselves, but you won't find your potential until you apply for them and take the chance. And then after going abroad, I realized that maybe what I wanted to do or had in mind wasn't actually what I wanted to do. I also had the idea of pursuing a career in broadcasting. And while being in Spain, one of my professors was a journalist there. So I had a couple conversations with him. I went to a couple of workshops with him. And through those experiences, I came back with a different mentality, changed my major, and now I'm pursuing my broadcast journalism career.
Awesome. What about you, Kirby? Did the process of, planning to study abroad or studying abroad itself help you clarify any of your goals?
Yeah, definitely. So when I went to Morocco the first time, I thought that I wanted to do something with international service, but I wasn't sure what niche I wanted to fill. And when I was there, I actually became really inspired with environmental and climate change issues. And I've always been kind of interested in that, but I didn't realize the effects that it was having on the Arab world. And so then when I came back from my trip to Morocco, I realized I need to study this. So I was going to add a sustainability minor, but unfortunately that was cut the semester before I came home. So instead, I just kind of waited to see what options I could have. And that's also kind of how I chose my Costa Rica program in the spring. I chose the program based off of their sustainability program. So when I was in Costa Rica, I studied about sustainable living, climate change issues. I studied Costa Rican environmental policy. And really just that being there made me realize that I wanted to create a self-designed major. So now I have a self-designed major through the Honors College in Sustainable Development. And through all of these experiences, kind of figuring out what part of the world I want to work in, what I want to do, I actually applied for an internship over the summer. Lindsay actually, she sent it to me and she was like, hey, you should take a look at this. And so between working full-time and and everything going on with COVID, I applied for the Virtual Student Federal Service Internship, and I actually learned last week that I will be completing an internship with USAID, studying climate change issues in the Middle East. So really everything that I've done through my study abroad has created really my path, and now I get to do this really awesome internship that hopefully will further forge my path.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, both of you. Tino, I think you said you had to head to class at 6, so I'll go to you next. Do you have any tips you'd like to share with students who are just starting to consider studying abroad? And maybe you want to hit on any of the concerns that you saw on the poll in the beginning. Some students outside of finance, people said they had concerns about credits, getting classes they could count, safety, eligibility.
Definitely. Finances, like I said before, is the biggest one. So it's important to start saving as soon as possible. From my experience, make a budget. I had a budget for every month that I was there. So try to plan accordingly. I know for a fact you're gonna want to bring stuff back. So that's also another thing you need to consider money for. One of the big things also is set goals for yourself while you're abroad. I highly recommend that. At the end of the day, we need to remember that we're there to study, but that doesn't mean that we can't have fun also. Just remember that by studying abroad, you'll be able to obtain important skills that will serve you in the future. And also keep an open mind, immerse yourself into a different culture, be open to all of the new experiences possible. Try new things, come out of your comfort zone, because it's an experience of a lifetime.
Awesome, thanks. And I'm just noticing a few of the questions that have come in. Haley asked, which program did you go with? I'm not sure which student she was asking, but I can say that Tino's program was through Keys. It was Segovia in Spain over the spring semester, a Spanish language program. And then Kirby did ISA Costa Rica first semester and CIEE Rabat, Morocco, right?
Yes.
Lauren asked, how do you balance comparing all of the different programs? Do you want to speak to that, Kirby? Like because you were looking at a lot of different things.
Yeah, so whenever I knew that I wanted to study abroad in the spring of 2020, but I wasn't sure where. I just knew what I wanted to study. So I came to Catherine's office again, since she had advised me previously. And I kind of just said, this is what I want to study. I don't know where in the world I want to go. I'm open to anywhere and everywhere. And she actually helped me go through programs. So I know we looked at some in New Zealand, we looked at some in Spain, we looked at the one in Costa Rica that I ultimately ended up choosing. And I chose that one based off of the courses that were offered, and also the price too. But I chose it because I thought that most of the courses I wanted to take would transfer back to Western. And I thought that there were a lot of opportunities to study things there that I wouldn't get to study back at WKU, such as the Costa Rican environmental policy class. I got to look specifically at how Costa Rica creates environmental policy and how it enforces it within the country, because I want to use that as like a case study for when I eventually work in the Arab world creating possibly environmental policy.
Awesome.
Also,
yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Adding to like what Kirby kind of said, one of the biggest decisions for me when selecting a program was living with the homestay family. I knew for a fact that if I was going to go to Spain to improve my language skills, I wanted to live with the Spanish family. I didn't want to live in a residence hall. And having that experience was awesome because I was able to immerse myself into the culture, trying different things in their cuisines, meeting new people, meeting my homestay mom's family. It's just an amazing experience. So definitely keep that in mind if you want a program that offers homestays, or if you want to be living in a residence hall with other students.
And that brings up a good point. I was just going to say, you have to kind of identify what are the most important things for you. And that can be a starting point for narrowing down to programs, because we have so many options. I mean, you can just see by the schedule of sessions happening. And it's hard to understand the difference between all these different acronyms and program providers. And that's where advisors can come in. We have student and peer advisors, and then also me, Krista, and Katie are the staff advisors, and we can help you with that process of trying to sift through those options and figure out what might be the best one for you. What were you going to say, Kirby?
Just living with a host family, for me, I did in Morocco and in Costa Rica, it was the best part of my experience. But I know that not everyone wants to live with a host family, so you should definitely consider what all of the options are, and if you can live with a host family or in a dorm type setting or an apartment. But I would definitely recommend to live with a host family.
Yeah, I had that experience as well and really enjoyed it. Oh, quite a lot of programs offer that option, especially language programs, but there's some others that aren't language focused. A question from Maddie is, are there a lot of study abroad opportunities for art majors? Yes, there are quite a few. Most of them, well, you can choose from long-term or short-term. I mean, a few come to mind. There's a program in Italy through our partner, Lorenzo de Medici. They're having a session this week, and they have some awesome studio art and graphic design courses on their program. I believe they have studio art. I know for sure they have graphic design. And it's in Florence, Italy, so it's a great destination for art. And then in our summer, there tends to be a number of different options. We have so many different partner programs that you can choose a lot of different countries. I'm just thinking of what's coming to mind, but Italy for sure. We have a program in Korea that usually has some studio art courses in the summer. That's something that would be great to come and meet with an advisor to get some help with narrowing down to what options might be best for your major. The next question, how do you balance out credits when you're studying abroad, especially if you know you will be unable to get credits to progress one of your majors? I see. So if you have multiple majors, how do you make sure you're choosing a program that helps you stay on track? Do either of you, Tino or Kirby, have any response for that?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kirby.
Okay. So when I studied abroad in the spring, so I'm an Earth major, and when I studied abroad in Costa Rica, obviously I can't study Arabic while I'm there. So for me, I could fit it because of my previous study abroad experience in Morocco kind of, put me ahead in my major. But it was definitely difficult coming back with the language because I went 8 months or so without speaking Arabic every day. So it's definitely a decision that you have to weigh. And I would recommend the sooner in your language program, language development, the better. So if you are just in the first year, then definitely I think doing it sooner rather than later would be better so that you don't lose out. I also think that it depends on the language, and you should talk with your advisor about it, because for Arabic, for example, there are some courses that are only offered in certain semesters, in the fall or in the spring. And so this spring, because I was abroad, I missed out on a class that I do need to take within the major, but it's okay because I can take it this upcoming spring. So definitely talk to your advisors, your specific language advisor, to see that you're not going to miss out on anything that's super important the semester that you plan to go abroad.
Great response. Anything to add, Tino?
Just like Kirby said, definitely if you can do it earlier, take the opportunity. With my situation, I came into college with AP credit. So if you have AP credit for a language, that could possibly help you even more. So I actually, like I mentioned before, I only had 4 courses left to complete the Spanish major. So I took the opportunity because if I didn't do it, it was now or never. So if you're in a situation like that, definitely go for it.
Great. And there's two final questions. I know we're over time, but I'm just going to address them real quickly. Haley is saying that she actually had a difficult experience with her host family, and how can you avoid that on programs with host families? Do either of you, because since you both experienced host family housing situations, do you have any advice? Did you have a difficult situation or know of other students who did?
I personally never had a problem with my host mom. I mean, I was always courteous with my surroundings. I always made sure that I behaved, obviously. So I wouldn't be able to speak much upon that question. All of the other students that were on my program had great relationships with their host families. So I can't speak on that one.
What about you, Kirby?
When I first went abroad in Morocco, there were some issues, mostly with my lack of communication with my host family. I'm definitely someone who, growing up in the South, you're told to, just kind of be thankful for what you get. And so, for example, I would take cold showers and I wouldn't say anything about it because I was like, at least I have running water, it's fine. The water pressure is good, but it's cold. And it turns out that I literally just had to ask my host family to light the heater, and then I would have had a hot shower for the 2 months that I was there. I learned this the last week before I left. So sometimes I would have hot water, but that was when my host mom was in the kitchen cooking. But I actually do know of another student on my program who had some difficulties with her host family, and she told our program provider about it and was communicating with them, and they were really accommodating, asked her if she wanted to go to a new host family, if she wanted to live in an apartment instead, if they should somehow talk to the family and intervene to try and fix the issues that they were having. There were actually a few situations like that with the program. One girl was allergic to a cat, and the host family had cats, and so she left the family and went to an apartment for a couple of weeks, or maybe just a week, and then she decided, I love the host family experience too much, and she went back to that family because she really loved them, and they moved the cat somewhere else for the rest of her time. So yeah, I think just communicating with your program provider to kind of fix any situations that you might have with your host family, and definitely those intercultural issues that come up, like not wanting to ask for hot water. If I had just mentioned it to my program provider, I'm sure they would have offered guidance on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, all of the programs have staff on site that you can go to if you're having any kind of issue like that, and then just openly communicating goes a long way. And the final question is, how will the corona situation affect studying abroad this summer? That is yet to be seen. We do not know yet, but we are really hopeful that at least some programs will go forward. So we're planning as if it's going to happen. We're hoping that there's going to be a vaccine available by early next year. But we're just going to have to take it, little by little, like seeing how the situation unfolds and looking at travel advisories for the specific countries where our students are wanting to go and where we're running programs. So we'll probably know more, by February or so. That's probably when we would make a call, or at March at the latest. But we're still encouraging students to move forward with their plans. Any final comments from Lindsay?
I just want to say one quick thing relevant to nationally competitive scholarships with COVID disruptions. Most of the funding agencies that we are working with you to pursue funding from are flexible and understanding of COVID disruptions. So just as an example, people who were previously awarded a Gilman scholarship for study abroad this summer or this semester, who then couldn't study abroad, are able to defer or push back their funding. So that goes to show that it's worth the investment of energy into the possibility, because they want you to study abroad, even if it's not just yet. So go through the process, see what options you have and what possibilities you have, and then we'll help you navigate any changes that come up.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone for your attention and for joining us for the session. And I want to thank our panelists, Kirby and Tina, who had to step out to go to class, and then Tiffany and Lindsay, of course, for all of the good information you all shared. We will be, this presentation is recorded, so if anyone wants to go back and view it or share it with someone, we'll have it available probably on our website. We'll communicate that out to students over the next week or two. And of course, we'll follow up about the free t-shirts and with scholarship info, and you can contact any of us. Our information is on our website. You can email us or call, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions you have and help you with your planning process. So have a good evening.